Picture this. We're at the stock exchange. Traders are on the floor pit below. Hanging from the ceiling is an action hero. He represents the action of a trade. How about that? Some SIE students get confused with orders, thinking they're complicated. There's really only three types of orders. You've got buys, sells, and sell shorts. Everything else would just be an additional instruction on these order types. So buy is easy, right? If I want to own shares of Apple stock, I need to place a buy order. Then what's the difference between sell and sell short? Well, if I place a sell order for 5 shares of Apple stock, the firm where my account is going to look at my account and grab 5 shares out of the account and send them to the person who bought those shares from me. But what if I don't own shares of Apple? Then I could place a sell short. That lets me borrow shares from someone else and sell their shares. We'll get into more of the details about short selling in another video. For now, you just need to know that when you sell short shares, you're selling shares that you don't own. Now we have ropes connected to each of these signs. They're held together by the action hero. So to help you remember that those are the actions that you can take. So if you call into a trading desk and you tell the trader 500 shares of WMT, trader might ask you, what's the action? You need to say either buy, sell, or sell short. Having worked on a trading desk myself, I can tell you it's more common than you would expect. So we see that the action hero is holding a large A. What's that about? Well, the A is to represent asset. He also has a clipboard with tally marks in his mouth. That represents the amount. Altogether, we have action, asset, and amount. Those are the 3 A's you must have for a non-discretionary order. For example, sell 200 IBM, asset, action, amount. Buy 45 TGT, asset, action, amount. Buy a little Amazon. We've got asset and action, but what's so little? To an average Joe, a little might be 5 shares. To Jeff Bezos, it might be 1 million shares. So the amount must be specific. Same with the action and the asset. Trade a bunch of tech stocks in my account would not be a valid order. Trade is not an action, a bunch is not an amount, and tech stocks aren't an asset, maybe an asset class or sector. Asset, action, and amount are all that are needed for a valid order, but those 3 are not the only things that we can send to a trader. We can also add additional qualifiers. First, we see a clock with a switch on it. That's to remind you of time qualifiers. For the SIE, you need to know day and good till canceled, or GTC. Day means that the order must be completed in the day that it's entered. If the order is not completed, the rest of it will be canceled. GTC means that the order will remain open until it's either executed or canceled. Now, most firms are going to default orders to day. So if you place a buy 100 Apple and nothing else, that's going to be considered a day order. Now, why would we need to specify the time? Shouldn't all orders get executed when I enter them? Well, there's 2 main reasons why they wouldn't. First, say if we have a client who owns 1 million shares of a small Canadian sardine canning plant. On a normal day, only 10,000 shares are traded in the open market, but your client wants to sell 1 million shares. It may take more than a day to find enough buyers for all those shares. The second reason an order may last more than a day, let's say the client wants a specific price. The client says they want to sell 500 shares of Apple, but not for a penny less than $250 per share. Well, Apple may not even trade at $250 all day. So instead of watching Apple tick up and down day by day, you can just put in a GTC order. But wait, we've got a second instruction, right? We need to let the trader know that we're not willing to sell for less than $250. This would be referred to as a limit order, which is represented by a speed limit sign. It's the client saying the limit at which I'm willing to sell is $250. Could also be for a buy order. You could say, I really want to own Ford stock, but not at this price. I would say, well, what's your limit you'd be willing to spend? Maybe you say it's $10 per share. Okay, well, let's put in a buy order with a limit price of $10. We can send that as GTC and go on about our lives. If Ford ever trades down to $10 or below, then your buy order will likely be executed at a price of $10 or lower. Well, what kind of order are we sending if we don't give a price? That would be called a market order, which is the default way that orders are sent. Buy 100 Apple is a valid market order. meaning just give me the current price at the market. It's kind of like if I break my arm and I go to the emergency room. The doctor comes in and says, we need to do an x-ray. I don't say, whoa, wait a minute. How much is this going to cost? I need to go shop around. No, at that point, the price is the price. If I'm sitting there with a broken arm, I'm not really worried about the price. I just want the x-ray. So we talked about limit and we talked about market orders. The other price instruction you need to know about for the SIE is a stop order, which is represented by a stop sign. Stop is like you yelling, stop, the pain's too bad, get me out. Say I buy shares of Get You Right Pharma. There's a new drug that's going through trials. If the drug gets approved, the stock I think is going to go from $10 up to $100. If the drug gets rejected, I think the stock's going to be worth no more than $2. So I can watch and wait day by day, waiting to see if it gets approved or rejected, or I might place the sell stop at say $5, meaning if it gets to $5, I'm tapping out and yelling stop. So let's say that the drug gets rejected and the stock crashes one day from $10 down to $4. The moment that a trade happens at or below $5, my order immediately becomes a market order. So with a limit, I'm saying this is the most I'd be willing to pay, or this is the least I'd be willing to sell for, and I'm guaranteed to at least get that limit price or better. Now with the stop, I'm not guaranteed any price. It's just like me saying, stop, I want out, no matter what. I often see stops used two ways. I'm going to buy a stock because I think it's going to go up, but I might be wrong. It's rare, but it's happened before. Let's say the stock goes down 30%. I was probably wrong and I want out. So I'd place a stop about 30% below the current market price. The second way I see stops commonly used is let's say that I bought a stock and it went from $10 up to $200. I kind of want to go ahead and lock in my profit, but it may keep going higher. So let me place a stop order at $190 to make sure I at least keep most of the profit. We can also combine the two, meaning stop and limit, to make a stop limit order. Let's go back to the Get You Right Pharma example. Previously, I placed a stop at $5. When that triggered, it became a market order. Instead, I could place a stop limit. So when the stock traded down to $5, it would become a limit order. So let's say I place a stop limit with a stop price of $5 and a limit price of $3. What am I saying there? Well, the stock trades down to $5. I want to sell it for at least $3. So let's say the stock trades down to $4. That would trigger my $5 stop, and the $4 is above the $3 limit that I put on, so it would sell for $4. But what if the rejection comes out and it crashes all the way down to $2? The $5 stop would trigger, but I need at least $3 for my shares, or I'd rather just keep them. Okay, now what else might I want to tell the trader? Well, next we find this fill machine. Depending on where you place the lever, determines how much you'll get and when you'll get it. Let's go back to our client that owns 1 million shares of the sardine canning company. Let's say he wants to sell at the current market price, but he doesn't want to wait days and days for the order to complete. We could offer to enter a fill or kill order. Fill or kill means we either execute everything or the whole order is canceled. He likes that idea, so we place a sell order 1 million SRDN FOK for fill or kill. Turns out we don't have a buyer for 1 million shares, so the order is canceled. No shares are sold. The order couldn't be filled completely, so it's killed. But the trader calls us. She says, I saw your fill or kill order for 1 million shares. I have a buyer for about 300,000 shares. Would you want to do that? So you ask the sardine man. You tell him we couldn't get the 1 million shares sold, but we have a buyer for around 300,000 shares. Sardine man says, okay, but I still don't want to turn this into like a multi-day trade that moves the price a lot. So this time you say, let's place an immediate or cancel order, or IOC. That means we're going to execute as much as we can at the current price and then cancel the rest of the order. So the order instructions are to sell 1 million SRDN IOC. The buyer ends up buying 400,000 shares, leaving 600,000 shares, and the rest of that order is canceled. So you tell the sardine man, great news. We sold 400,000 shares. We've only got 600,000 left. Sardine man says, okay, that's good. Keep an eye out for anybody else who might want to take the other 600,000 shares. But I need at least $10. So you got a better idea. You're not going to sit there and call the trading desk back and forth and watch it tick up and down all day. Instead, you're going to place an all or none order for the 600,000 shares. That's basically a fill or kill, except it doesn't have to be executed immediately. So this time you enter the order as sell 600,000 SRDN at 10 AON GTC. So the action is sell, amount is 600,000 shares, SRDN is the asset. We put a limit of $10. AON means all or none. Otherwise, every time the stock traded up to $10, we would be selling little bits. We want the full order executed or none of it. Hence the name, all or none. Then we have GTC, meaning good till canceled. So this order is going to sit open looking for a buyer until it's canceled or filled. That way, if our trader finds a buyer, say 3 days from now, she can sell the full 600,000 shares, and we just get a nice little notification that the order has been executed. So the fill restrictions you need to know for the SIE are fill or kill. I want full execution right now or none at all. This is urgent. You can remember F as fast and kill. You can't be half dead. Immediate or cancel. Immediately give me as much as you can and then cancel the rest. I like to remember the C for cancel as change as in keep the change. So partial fills are okay, but they must be immediate. And then all or none. It starts with the word all, as in take all the time you need to get everything, but nothing short of everything. So we have immediate but need all, immediate but don't need all, not immediate but need all. What about not immediate and don't need all? Well, then you really don't have a fill restriction anymore, right? The order can receive partial fills over time, which introduces us to the concept of held versus not held. That's represented by this trader holding a responsible sign. Mentally, when I hear the words held or not held, I always follow that up with the word responsible in my head. So if you send a held order, that means that you demand immediate execution and you will hold the trader responsible if you get a worse price. Not held means that the trader has the ability to try and get you a better price. But if you end up with a worse price, the trader's not held responsible. Here's how it works in practice. You place an order. Sell 10,000 SRDN held. That defaults to a market order because you didn't specify a limit or a stop price. The stock is thinly traded. You sell the first 100 shares at $10, the next 100 shares at $9.95, then 300 at $9.90, and so on. You end up selling the 10,000 shares at an average price of $9.60 just because there weren't that many buyers willing to buy any higher. Instead, you could have placed the order as a sell 10,000 SRDN not held. So the order comes into the trading desk. The trader doesn't send the full 10,000 shares to the market. Instead, she breaks up the orders into smaller pieces, maybe even checks around with other traders to find a buyer. She sells 2,000 shares in small pieces, then finds a buyer for 8,000 shares at $9.85. So you end up selling the full 10,000 shares as, let's say, an average cost of $9.86. Way better than the $9.60 on the held order. But there's a risk. What if it took the trader 30 minutes to work the order and get it executed? In between when the order is sent and when it gets executed, there's breaking news. The Sardine Company management has been arrested for fraud because they fabricated company financials. The stock goes from $10 down to $2. Because you sent that order as not held, you can't hold the trader responsible. Now, typically the way it works in reality is you send held orders and they automatically get routed to the market, especially for small orders. So what you'd see in practice is you send an order and almost instantly it comes back filled. I'm talking like less than a second. The same is often true for small not held orders. So if I send a not held order for 5 shares of Apple, there's really nothing for the trader to do or work there. Apple trades around 50 million shares per day. Held versus not held is typically a concern for situations like the sardine example, where I'm selling as many shares in one trade as the market normally sees in a full day. Next, we have a dictionary, which sounds similar to discretionary. When it comes to discretionary orders, we go back to the 3 A's that we started at the beginning of the video with: asset, action, and amount. If you're determining the asset, action, or amount for a customer, you are said to be exercising discretion and entering a discretionary order. You must either get specific asset, action, and amount to enter the order, or you need written discretionary authority over the account prior to entering the order. Now, very testable on SIE, what is okay to choose on a non-discretionary order? Price and time. So you can go to lunch with the client. They say, I want to sell 100 Amazon shares. When you get back to your desk, you can sell the 100 shares at any time the rest of the day. Now, typically order instructions are valid for 1 day, so I couldn't wait till tomorrow and then place the order. You'd have to do it today, but you can pick and choose the price and time. That concludes orders and order instructions. If you have any questions, leave them below. Otherwise, We'll see you in the next video.